And let me start by, we've had internal announcements about the organization and a focus on 4 boxes, and I'm not sure that it was really clear to everybody. And I know that we are kind of in this wide spectrum between some people thinking that we are a video streaming company, some people thinking we're a network company, and some people thinking we are an e-commerce company. And hopefully, for the next half hour, we're kind of going to talk about what the direction really is, where we're headed, what this all means, and get on the same page. That's probably a lot to hope for in 30 minutes, though. This is a diagram that I put together just because I think that there was a lot of confusion about what the 4 boxes really mean. And let me start out by saying that this is probably, you're going to say, yeah, but what about this or what about this? This is meant to be kind of cover 80% of what we do. How does it fit within those 4 boxes that we talked about before? And the 4 boxes being e-commerce, global network development, bandwidth and network services, and technology. And if you look at a typical transaction, what we've really, at least at this point with MediaCast or MediaTransport, what we've talked about is a customer wanting to get their content to an end user, to a desktop. And so we go out and do deals with the content provider over our wide area network through ISP, CLEX, potentially RBox. John McClain won't give up on them. And to a desktop. And that's the transaction we've talked about. What I want to kind of go in today and really kind of expand on is that these become raw capabilities in our network. And what we're really selling is e-commerce applications or e-business applications, e-business capability, e-business enablement. And that everything else that we've set up still works in that regard. But before we get there, let's talk about the boxes. If we talk about e-commerce services, what we're really talking about is selling, as most people in this room, other than, I guess, the operations people as well. What we're talking about there is the end of the transaction, our customers. The content, the application service provider, the independent software vendor, and eventually the enterprise, but we'll get to that in a second. The global network development is putting together the wide area network connectivity worldwide. That's not just fiber builds, that's swaps, that's transactions that we do with carriers that we write on their network. It's not provisioning in that sense of the word. It's really strategic deals that give us worldwide connectivity for a wide area network. Bandwidth and network services is really the distribution end. It's the ISPs. It's the connectivity from the ISPs to the enterprise. It's engineering, if you will, all the way through the firewall at the enterprise to the desktop. It's getting the content to the desktop. And then technology and operations, which ride over the whole thing. Let me talk a little bit about this box and what we're really talking about here. We've set up a couple of products that we're selling today, Cast and Transport. Hopefully everybody knows that. If that's a surprise to people, we're in big trouble. And I think that if you look at those, what they are is raw capabilities that we believe have application in the next generation of e-commerce experience. And I think it's like, I think I might have said it at the last employee meeting. To me, it's like if Nike was going to produce a TV commercial and they wrote this script for that TV commercial. They have a choice. They can either make that commercial with all the action, with all the video, with everything behind it, or they could show that script on the screen. How many people would read that script? That's e-commerce today. That's the internet today. What we believe that it will be tomorrow is the full-blown commercial. It's incorporating streaming video. It's incorporating high bandwidth applications and services into a new experience. It's taking that experience and then bringing it back to tying it into the whole supply chain for the enterprise, tying it into their ERP systems, their customer systems, and creating an e-business. And that's the platform that we are building, an e-business platform, which will enable that new generation of e-commerce capabilities. The first way that manifests itself is through streaming video, large file transfer, video conferencing. So those become the raw ingredients to an e-business platform of the future. The nice thing about it is we can hopefully get paid for developing those capabilities today. So when you look at it, we're out selling transport and CAS today as the raw ingredients into an e-commerce platform. Where that manifests over time is all of a sudden, who are we selling those to? Primarily broadcast and entertainment industry. It becomes an interesting vertical for us to go after when we talk about e-commerce. So where are we headed with all this? Where I think we're headed with this is we'll continue to sell transport and CAS. We've got revenue objectives to hit this year. As I'm sure most of you heard when we were on the phone, since probably a lot of you were on the phone, I said revenue wasn't all that important this year. I can't believe I really said that. But
I do have that conversation.
Yeah, I figured you did. But it is important that customers begin paying us and that we validate our products in the marketplace by the generation of revenue. Does it matter whether it's 10 or 20 million? Probably not this year. But it does matter that it's something, that customers are beginning to pay us. Where we'll go over time is we'll look at, okay, now that we've got, let's call it the media and entertainment industry as a vertical. We're selling to the networks, we're selling to entertainment companies, cast and transport. Now how can we get even further back into their workflow processes? How can we get more integrated into those companies so we become the network of choice for e-commerce applications? How can we create a new revenue opportunity for those companies? And we'll do the same thing in 3 or 4 other industries in order to achieve the objective of becoming the dominant e-commerce or e-business platform of the future. So that any company wanting to create this new vision, this new experience over the internet has to be on our network, because the capabilities that we have far surpass anybody out there today. Do you want to say anything more?
I'll just add to that a couple of points. I guess the way I perceive what we have up here and what we're trying to build is as Joe said, a platform for e-business. And we've identified a couple of products that we think will get that jump started. But there's got to be an infinite number of other products that we can develop and launch on our network or on our platform. And the way I would look at this is it's not 3 separate business units. It's really part of one continuous business, but there are 3 areas of focus. And we identified essentially the input side to the network as one area of focus, developing the network itself as an intermediate focus, and then distribution and managing bandwidth as the other area of focus. So in 2 years or 3 years or 5 years or whatever it might be, all of this will work as one platform where we are streaming media, we're streaming information, we're managing e-business for all of our customers on both ends of the spectrum, and we're able to manage a global network on a very dynamic basis. I mean, we're talking about being able to put bandwidth into or out of our network on a second-by-second basis based on what we know is happening on the media side and on the input side, and also what our customers are demanding on the distribution side. So the next 2 or 3 years, we're trying to develop the most extensive, most flexible, high-bandwidth network in the world. And if we do that, we have the e-business platform of choice. In order to do that, you've got to take a few little steps to get things going. And we've got John McLean and his team out trying to develop the distribution network with as many deals with ISPs and RBOX and CLECs and enterprises that can use bandwidth as we can. On a parallel path, we're building a bandwidth management or bandwidth marketing and trading group with Ted Seitz and his group so that over the next 2 or 3 years, we can build these out on a parallel path, doing the same with the global network development and on the e-commerce side. So we have 3 or 4 parallel paths going, and if we can manage this over the next 2 or 3 years, we'll wake up one morning and we will have the most awesome, flexible network in the world that's attached to 100 million desktops and hopefully every content provider in the world. And they're using our system because they want to, because it's the only system that can deliver quality of service, high bandwidth to a huge customer base. So I guess that's really all I have to add to that. Obviously, technology and operations goes across all of these groups, and there are some real challenges to making this work. And that's another function that is working on a parallel path to tie all these together. So the primary rationale for putting our organization into 3 or 4 different areas of focus is really to get focus so that we can develop this entire network simultaneously over the next 1 or 2 years and make sure that we got the resources allocated and the resources focused in order to do that.
Let's just go over, and I'm not sure.
Is this the only slide you have?
No, yeah, that's the only one. I can bring up that one of the org that has the names.
Joe, that's not the right template, is it?
Oh, God. Touche. Let me bring up that one slide, which is, I'd like to just kind of talk a little bit. I'm going to lose my battery here in just a second. Unless anybody's got a power cord handy, is talk about the people, because it's also ridiculous to assume that we're not going to have conflict between these organizations, and you need to kind of know who to go to, who to talk to, if you've got an issue. If you kind of look at the 4 boxes, the way we've divided it up is I'm the primary person responsible for the e-commerce services. If you look at the organization, it's really a very flat organization at this point. What I've tried to do is to say, listen, let's just keep the hierarchy out of it. Let's try to get done what we need done. So Matt's still working on all of the channel and programs and market development programs. You got Jeff Foster still doing the marketing, product marketing. Scott Smith and Bill Collins are the business development group at this point. We'll be adding to that. And Keith and April are still doing the sales piece. So everybody it's basically the same organization that we've had before on that side, with a little less hierarchy than we've had before. Rex is responsible for all the technology and operations, and right now, for the most part, that hasn't changed at all. Everybody who was reporting to Rex still reports to Rex. We've just kind of created, as Ken said, an area of focus. We've added some emphasis where we hadn't really had before. We've been building in the U.S., and at the end of this year, we will have about 10,000 miles of fiber in the U.S., route miles. If you look at fiber miles, it's 120,000 fiber miles. So we've been real successful in getting the network built. We're basically, for all practical purposes, done in the U.S. We may build a couple more routes. We may look at select opportunities, but for the most part, we're done. What has happened as a result of all these changes is that we've now looked at what are the global opportunities for development, not only from the standpoint of building, but for swapping, for trading capacity, for looking at other arrangements with other carriers. Steve Elliott's heading that up. That includes the work that we're doing in South America with Praveen Jain, for those of you who know him. And we're also looking at opportunities in India. We're working with a number of carriers for potential deals in Europe. And so clearly looking at this as a worldwide business. And then the network and bandwidth and network services, Ken is the primary person on that. Do you want to talk about organization there at all?
Okay, basically, bandwidth and network services consists of really two things. One is building out the distribution network. We want to have access to as many desktops as we possibly can over the next year or so that we can begin providing e-powered products and services to as many customers as possible, so that we can also begin providing what I'll call non-traditional finance-related services, bandwidth management-related services to all of those ISP or industrial or commercial customers that are connected to our system. At the same time, we have another unit which is really developing a market for bandwidth, so that what we want is we want a very flexible, price-sensitive marketplace where we can acquire bandwidth or we can sell bandwidth into that. What that enables us to do is have the largest network in the world available to us without actually having to build the largest network in the world. So what we can do is we can leverage our 12 fibers, or our 120,000 route miles into fiber miles, into millions of fiber miles if we need it, or right back down to 120,000 if we don't need it. That's a very powerful tool, and if we're going to build this global e-commerce network that can handle our customers when the demand is enormous, or can manage our customers cost efficiently when the demand isn't so great, we've got to have the ability to add to and take away from that bandwidth. So I think one of the big misconceptions is we develop these markets so that we can trade natural gas or electricity or bandwidth, because that in and of itself is a very profitable opportunity. Well, at the end of the day, I hope it is, and I think that it will be, but we're really building those markets so we can create networks that are flexible and very cost efficient, and a byproduct of that is being able to trade those markets and make hopefully a lot of money doing that. So the focus is to build those markets so that we can create a flexible network, and in addition to that, we'll make money within those markets. And again, the focus on the network services side is to build a network that has scope, has access to millions and millions of desktops, because that accessibility is an integral part to our network. Now, I also think that we'll be able to make money with each and every one of those desktops just by having the relationship and finding ways that we can do business together. But the overall goal is to build a very flexible, efficient global network to launch e-business applications off of.
So, anybody have any questions? Yeah.
Was that a change? You said that there was a misconception that we're just building this for bandwidth trading. Because I thought that was kind of the message that we were getting out of Houston for a while, is that the primary interest was for doing bandwidth trading. Because the example was, it's like, I guess, the recent sale of the Enron oil and gas business, where they said, we don't really actually need the pipes and the oil field. We just like to trade on it, and we finally actually thought that the actual delivery of this stuff is kind of low margin, and we'd rather just trade it. So I thought that was the focus of Enron.
No, really, we don't have to own the commodity, just like we don't have to own all of the bandwidth in the world in order to bundle it into products. So the sale of Enron oil and gas was really reflective of, we don't need a big position in natural gas in order to create new products and services for our customers. What we do need to have is an understanding of the market, a good financial understanding, so we can bundle those products with financial tools. Now, I think people that follow Enron sort of from the outside and don't have a real detailed knowledge of how it works internally think of a lot of our businesses as trading business, and that's how we make our money. And we do make quite a bit of money just trading the commodity, but by far the bulk of the money that Enron makes in the high margin stuff is by using the knowledge that we get from trading and the flexibility that we get from trading to bundle new products together that haven't been created before. So I don't think it's ever been a focus of Enron to create a trading business just to become a trader. And in fact, if we were recognized by Wall Street as being a trading company, we would have a multiple of 8 or 9 times earnings instead of the 33 to 35 times earnings. And that's because Wall Street recognizes that we use the ability to trade and liquidate in a liquid market as a tool to create higher margin products.
And I would tell you that some of the comments that Jeff Skilling has made or others over the last months, think of it as a learning process that people have gone through over the last 6 months. And comments that were said 4 months ago probably wouldn't be said today. And I think, let me give you a couple examples. I think one is when when people talk about trading, what they're really talking about is the wholesale bandwidth market, a market that's based on the wholesale marketing, a not totally physical based, but derived from the physical side of the business. That's the area that ECT has done. That's the Enron business. And so when Jeff talks about, gee, the primary reason we're in this business or our primary interest is bandwidth trading, that's what he's talking about. That's this area. At that point in time, I don't think he really understood what we're trying to do here. I think if you asked him today, he would say exactly what Ken said, that this is the way, hopefully we can make money on it in and of itself. And the motivation here, if you look at this, I would say without exception, our hope is that we can make money in every one of these boxes. That'd be the best of all worlds. Hopefully at any one point in time we're making money in one of the boxes. But the idea now is that this is the business. This is supporting that business to give us the most flexible, most dynamic network that we can have through the trading, through looking. Really what this is all about is a mindset difference. What we're saying is we do not define the business by the physical network that we're building or that underlies it. We define the network, we define the business by the customers that we're serving. And so that's I think a big change, not for us, but for this industry. And what we're saying is we don't need to own everything to be able to serve our customers. We're going to serve our customers in the most appropriate, lowest cost manner, most efficient manner we can. When we talk about this as the wide area network, don't think about this as a fiber-based network delivery system only. This is also satellite. This is however we can get the content, the e-commerce applications, whatever they are, to the desktop and get it there as efficiently as we can.
Yeah, I think we're a services company. We're not a media cast company,
right,
or a file transfer company, and we're not a trading company.
Right.
We are a company which makes it easy for our customers to use high bandwidth applications because that's how they make money. And it's kind of a hard thing to do because it involves making it seamless all the way from the point of entry into the system to the point of use by the customer. But there's nobody else doing it, and that's why it's going to be profitable for us. And I think that's probably one of the key points that we want to get across here today is we're not in the media transport business, we're not in the media cast business, we're not in the fiber development and building business, and we're not in the trading business. We are using each of those as tools to create a seamless, flexible network because that's what our customers are going to want. And nobody else is providing that, and they'll pay a premium if we make it easy for them.
No other questions? Yeah.
I know there's been some discussion about the enterprise and what exactly we plan to do there. I'd be interested if both of you could provide some perspectives there as to what we will and we will not do with the enterprise. And also, as enterprises want to do e-commerce, how is that going to play into which side of the shop internally that falls in?
Let me take a shot at that, and let me say the answer is it depends. And the reason that I created this diagram was exactly that question. It's because John McClain said, I'm going to go out and start talking to enterprises. And the e-commerce group said, well, wait a minute, you can't. We're going to talk to enterprises. And I think the answer is they both are right. John McClain's group is working at how do I get the content to the end user, to the desktop. In a lot of cases, that creates one big hurdle, and that's the firewall of the enterprise. If you can't get through the enterprise firewall, get to the desktops, you can't deliver anything. Think about this side of the equation as the pull side of it. How do I create demand at the desktop by getting users at that desktop wanting to see content, wanting to transact business, e-commerce business? This is not the enterprise trying to e-commerce enable their business. Where the enterprise company trying to e-commerce enable their business is over here. It may be the exact same enterprise, but one's a push strategy, one's a pull strategy. In this one, they're trying to get the content out. In this one, they're trying to get the content. So I would also argue that that we will have John McClain's group working with enterprises, the distribution group working with enterprises, and we will have the e-commerce group working with enterprises. We need to make sure we're well coordinated, but they're two very different functions. Will we sell directly to the enterprise? What I put here is that system integrators and value-added resellers as kind of primary channels into the enterprise. We can't go to Walmart and say, we're going to e-commerce enable your business. We need a system integration firm like IBM or something to come in with us because there's a lot more to that sale than bandwidth. There's a lot more to that sale than network. There's a lot more to that sale than simply getting their content from one end to the other. And so our primary channel into the enterprise on the e-commerce side will be through channels. It will not be direct. Does that mean we won't talk to enterprises direct? Well, we probably will, because in the course of a sale, you're probably talking, you want to know what they want. You want to know what their needs are. That answer the question, Murat?
I have a follow-up on that.
Yeah.
So taking sort of the video conferencing as a specific example, we, Enron, when your team's got to deal with an ASP bill.
Right.
Right. And now this then bundled e-powered solution needs to get sold into an enterprise.
Right.
Right. And the enterprise needs to get endpoints configured, network configured, and all the technical networking issues need to be figured out. Whose responsibility is that? These systems integrators and VARs on the left here who make that sell into enterprise, or are we going to rely upon that side to make that happen?
Like I said, this diagram covers 80%, not 100%. Because in that example, my assumption is that for video conferencing, it initially is an intranet kind of application. It's not an anywhere-to-anywhere application. So in that case, you're probably talking about an enterprise that wants to connect their offices with video conference, which may or may not go through the ISP. Depends on the enterprise.
So what you do is you pick up the phone and you call John McClain, or you call me or Joe and say, we got to get a team together to figure this out.
Right.
Okay, we got to get a team together to figure this out.
Okay, great. I mean, I don't know the answer to that, but I know I know we got to figure it out, and I think it's going to take a team. So
we're talking to people on the left, like already, and they want to be able to sell this stuff into the enterprise. They want to e-commerce enable an enterprise with e-powered solutions, but they also want to create demand pull.
Right.
From the enterprise.
See, and
we have got to figure that out, because to me that is one of the critical barriers to being successful. I know Enron can use that service. I know McKinsey can use it. I know our gas and electric customers can use it. But I don't even know how to break into the Enron organization to make it work within Enron. If we have all of the technology to make video conferencing on our network seamless, how do we ultimately break down the two barriers at the end? And
see, and I could see.
That's